Hello, sixth years. Today we're going to revise over our comparative study and, more importantly, cultural context. The following mind map that I'm just going to talk you through is one I found online, but I cannot seem to find the link to it anymore. But I would like to say that I did not make this, and P. Carey, whoever made it, shared it, and I stole it. So I'd like to thank him for the content. Don't want to be seen to be stealing. So we're going to have a look at cultural context, revise over what is it and how do we actually structure our answer for it. For Monday, you will be needing an A3 sheet. If you can get a sketch pad or something over the weekend, because you will need one that size to make your comparative notes and our mind maps and stuff like that. Okay, let's get going. Okay, so first year definition. Just to remind you, the cultural context is the world or the society of the text you are studying. It refers to when and where the story is set, the type of society that's represented in the text, the character's way of life, its values and its day-to-day rituals. And when studying cultural context, we look for evidence of what is important to the author and what is important to the characters. So that is cultural context and our definition. So when studying cultural context, we look at the cultural structures within society. So what is important within this society? And normally that links to social, political, religious and economic structure of the society. Below are suggestive paragraphs in an essay. So we've got poverty and class, the role of women and the role of men, violence within society, family structure and the role of religion. Okay, so they are all different cultural structures within society. As you know from our studying of our three texts, Great Gatsby, Playboy of the Western World and Brooklyn, that we've dealt with poverty and class in great detail. We've dealt with the role of men and women in great detail. We've touched upon violence in society, family structure and role of religion. Okay, but the first two are very important in the three texts we've studied. Okay, moving on. So when looking at poverty and class, we have to look at the three texts and consider if poverty is an issue within our respected societies. Does poverty motivate characters? Does poverty limit a character's dream and lead to a lack of fulfillment? Does poverty play an important factor in the overall plot? And are there issues of class snobbery? And then you have to look at the key scenes to highlight these issues. So, number one, does poverty motivate characters? Yes, 100% it does in Playboy of the Western World and in Brooklyn. Does poverty limit a character's dreams and lead to a lack of fulfillment? It does so in Playboy of the Western World. However, in the film Brooklyn, Eilish manages to move to America and achieve a successful life in America. Does poverty play an important factor in the overall plot? In Playboy of the Western World, it does. As I said, in Brooklyn, you see Eilish moving from poverty and disadvantage into an affluent lifestyle. Are there issues of class snobbery? That would definitely come in The Great Gatsby. The idea of the old money in East Egg and then in West Egg, new money. Okay, and the various different parties and the opulence and all of that is just showing off Gatsby's wealth and the Buchanan's wealth. So that is poverty and class. And also within The Great Gatsby, you see the difference between Gatsby's wealth, the Buchanan's wealth, and then Nick, who's just surviving basically on his wages. Okay, so that's poverty and class. Okay, now we're going to move on to the role of women and the role of men. Compare and contrast what position or role do women have in each text. Is male dominated or a patriarchal society? Have women got the same opportunities as men, or is there machoism? In which text have women more power or lack of power, and is there stereotyping? So, society overall in The Great Gatsby is male dominated. Daisy is very spineless, she's very much loyal to her husband, she is the wife, she doesn't have to work, and she basically does what she's told. Her one act of rebellion, it could be argued, is having the affair with Gatsby, but as you know, ultimately her loyalty lied with Tom. Okay, so you've got your male-dominated society. Have women the same opportunities as men? In Playboy of the Western World, no. In The Great Gatsby, no, they do not. The one text you can see a shift away from a patriarchal society is in Brooklyn, that you actually see strong independent women who are going to America, seeking a better life and becoming educated and getting good jobs. You can see that shift in society, and it's just started to happen. Is there machoism? Yes, in Great Gatsby there most definitely is. Tom is always showing off, Gatsby is always showing off. And Christy Mahon then to a certain extent puts on this sense of bravado when he sees how popular he is for his lies about killing his father. Okay, and in which text have women more power or lack of power? Well, that's what we're saying. We're saying Brooklyn, they seem to have a bit more power. Playboy and Gatsby, not necessarily. And is there stereotyping? There is most definitely stereotyping in all three of the texts. So that's the role of men and women. Okay, violence in society is another area that we can look at. We can compare what types of violence is shown in each of the texts. Is it domestic or violence shown towards women? Emotional violence, war, violence from occupation or colonialization, violence towards children. Where does the violence come from, and in which text seems more violent? So obviously in The Great Gatsby we have violence towards women. We have the way Tom treats Myrtle. Couldn't think of her name there for a second. George Wilson's wife, he actually does physically hit her. We also have the violence of the car accident. So while it's not deliberate, that can also be classed as violent. And then we have the murder of Gatsby by George Wilson. So that's violence in society in Gatsby. In Brooklyn, we don't necessarily see much violence at all in Brooklyn. And then in Playboy of the Western World, we see how society turns against, Christy turns against Old Mahon, and then we see how the society within the pub all turn against Christy, including pegging at the end of the novel, or the play. Okay, so that's violence in society, but there's a lot of violence in Gatsby. Playboy, yes, you do have a fair bit, and then in Brooklyn there's little to no violence, so there are your comparisons. Okay, then we go on and we look at values. So what values and principles are important in the society of the text? Is friendship and respect valued? Or is success and money more significant? Is the society law-abiding? What part does religion play in the lives of the characters? Are people liberal and tolerant, or are they narrow-minded? Do you agree with the values you find in this society? And would you like to live in the world of this text? This, I feel, is under the title of values, is too broad a topic to go into at the moment, because normally I would break that down to is society law abiding, does religion play a part in it? Then I'd break that into 3 sections rather than just have one overarching section. So what I plan to do is leave that, and then when we're revising over our notes on Monday, I will have that broken down into 3 or 4 different areas. So that's all I'm going to say on values for the moment. Okay, now we're going to look at family structure. So family structure and values often shape a character. Consider how the family have a negative or positive influence on the main protagonist in each of the texts. So how does family have an influence on your main characters? Are the families dysfunctional? Nuclear, traditional or extended? That's basically, are they like a blended family? Is it a traditional family? Are they distant relations? How does that affect our characters? So there we'd have Gatsby, who doesn't really have any contact with his father. We'd have the Buchanans, who clearly do not have a functional marriage, or don't appear to have a functional marriage in The Great Gatsby. And then Nick's close relationship with Daisy and how that impacts everything. Okay, is a close relationship a substitute for family life? I forgot to say, in Brooklyn, the family is fairly standard. Eilish and her mother and her sister. And in Playboy of the Western World, obviously there's dysfunction between Christy Mahon and Old Mahon. But it's a traditional family in relation to Peggy and her father. So is a close relationship a substitute for family life? You could argue that Dan Cody acts as a substitute father for Gatsby. You could also argue that the house share to Eilish is in Brooklyn, that acts as a substitute for family life. And in Playboy, Christy feels accepted in the Shebeen to where he's staying, so that could act as a substitute, or you could see it acting as a potential substitute. So what sort of relationships exist within the family, and what insights do you gain about the world of the text from examining family structure? So one example there would be, what do we learn about society in Playboy of the Western World, in that Peggy, her marriage was basically arranged, and then what happens when she went after Christy Mahon? How did she get her father's approval, etc, etc. Okay, so that's family structure. These are just a list of comparative links that were on the mind map, and I just thought they might be helpful, but I know you have a whole PowerPoint of these on the English OneNote. Okay, I don't want you to do this question, but I want you to have a look at it. So, the main characters in a text are often in conflict with the world or culture they inhabit. Discuss this in relation to 3 texts on your course. So, what I want you to do is, for the next 5 minutes, think about Gatsby, think about either Peggy or Christy, and think about Eilish, and how are they in conflict with the world or the culture they inhabit? How are they held back by the society in which they live in? And see, just can you come up with 3-4 examples of each character from each text, because that's basically how you plan out your answer. Okay? And that is cultural context. Gone over quickly. We will be doing the mind map on Monday, and it will be an awful lot more detailed than this. We will actually have the examples from each text in the mind map. So I hope you found this helpful. Bye.